Today I want to talk a little bit about, maybe a lot about, our beingness, our energetic self, and how everything that occurs within us has to do with some form of energy. I want to talk about how that energy enters our system. I want to talk about physiological or the quantum physics mechanics of energy. And I want to talk about the spiritual or ethereal connection to energy. And I want you to understand that a lot of times I'm going to interuse emotion and energy as the same thing. They're not exactly the same thing, but they're so interconnected that you can't really have one without the other. So any time that the physical body is connected to energy, there's some form of an emotion that's going to come up. And emotion is really sort of how we navigate the energy. It's really important that we learn how to manage our emotional connection, how we produce emotion, how we dispense and disperse emotion in relationship to when we interact with energy. That's really the way we gain control, connect to our higher self, and really become one with the truth of who we are. So today I want to talk about that. I'm probably going to break this hour class into 15-minute increments. So this would be session 1, section 1, A of D. I don't care how you look at it, but I'm excited to get started. So my name is Tracy, and I am a hypnotherapist, hypnotist, however you want to label me, doesn't matter. Labels do not matter. And I want to start by saying that, again, there are those who may find some offensive pattern in things I say. And typically, those people are going to be very strongly rooted in a religious organization. And it is not my purposeful intent to knock anybody out of a belief pattern or structure that they're in. But I do want to say up front that I'm open to any belief that you want to carry, and it's part of who you are, and I'm fine with it. I am not, however, a religious conscripted being. I understand from much of the interjection that's come into me through many sources that religion is of man, not of the universal connection or wisdom. It doesn't mean the intent set when a religion was created was not to be connected to the international and universal structure of an understanding of a higher power. It's just that man has a way of taking almost anything and subverting it to an ego driven process. Religion has become, for most people that I see within it, sort of a way that someone else can control their behavior and thoughts. And because most religions are driven through fear, and you can argue that, we could argue that for 20 classes, but the truth is, most people in a religion believe that if you don't follow certain guidelines, there's a punishment. And that punishment can range from being disowned by the Creator to burning in a fiery inferno for eternity. The issues I have with that is that eternity suggests a time frame, and the universe says there is no time, all time is one. So eternity would be hard to put your finger on. And secondly, there is not a beingness that is God, so to speak, that brings any punishment. The creator of all the energy that of who we are and who we ever hope to be is of a loving and connected energy. It's not an energy that sits in judgment or wants to imperil us for our beliefs. The energy that does bring us pain and suffering and punishment, or as we see it, karma, is the sonship or the mass of beingness that we know as humankind or mankind. And it actually extends a little beyond that to beings not residing on Earth. You might see them as extraterrestrial superconsciousness, although most superconsciousnesses are a little bit above the understanding of karma and the use and deployment of it as a means to modify behavior. But that being said, behavior is tied to an emotion, and emotions are tied to energy, and energy is tied to the universal cord that vibrates, and vibrations are tied to the creation, and all becomes one giant mass of energy. So I want to look at now how energy enters the body, its reaction once it's in the body, our personal physiological response to the energy that's passing through us or lodging in us, depending, and how do we go about managing it, modifying it, and restoring ourselves to health? Because our thought process is so intrinsically tied to our health and to our understanding that if we just shift our thoughts a little bit to the wrong direction, it's going to manifest in some kind of a physiological disorder or a behavior pattern that others, probably more quickly than we will begin to notice. And we create a vibrational pattern. We come in with one and we are layering things into it, which modifies it, it alters it. And that comes out in a lot of ways as something distorted. So let's talk about the physical body and what happens when an emotion or an energy enters it. And let's start by just picking an object wherever you are. Look around you. If you can make visual contact to something, even if you're not in a space that's associated with you, not in your home, find a color, find an object, find something, look at it, and just take a second and think about what's the feeling that arose. What kind of emotion came up? Now, you might say none, but be honest. You might have looked at something that belongs to a spouse that you don't like at all and you wish they never brought into the home. I had a husband that collected shot glasses, and when I met him, they were all around the kitchen. Now, I moved in, and in the beginning, I just allowed them to remain up on the plate rails, everywhere that he had them, because for him it was a very strong vibration of everywhere he'd been. I wasn't quite as evolved in my understanding of relationships at that time. So as a female, I was quickly endeavoring in my mind a plan to redecorate or to bring in some things that would make exhibiting the shot glasses in that way not work. But I knew I was going to have to engage him in it through a process. But my initial emotion was tacky or yuck or non-decorative, at least in the emotion it evoked in me. Because when I saw a bunch of shot glasses, I associated them with alcohol. I associated alcohol with behavior patterns that were not always stellar. And all of the thoughts that entered my mind with shot glasses that I wasn't even aware of on a conscious level rolled forward. And being a woman, I won and eventually got my way. And by the time we divorced, finally, there'd been 3 or 4 different styles that rolled through that kitchen, none of which involved displaying 120 shot glasses collected through a series of military deployments while he was in the Navy. I had an emotional attachment. I didn't like it. So there would have been an energy that would have gone through my system every time I walked in the kitchen whether I was consciously aware of it or not, until those shot glasses were removed that created an energy vibration. He had a completely different one because he collected them and he loved them. And he had memories attached to each one. Some fond, some whatever, some, kind of in my mind, not that great a memory, but for him it was positive. So we have an emotional response. So, what happens when we have that emotional response? In our brain, there's a gland called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus has a job is to take proteins in our system and very quickly create models. Imagine that you could take Legos, let's call it the proteins Legos, and you could put several together and make a square section or a section that looked like a wall. That would be simple. That would be a peptide. Just a simple structure. But let's say there was a complex emotion or a complex physical reaction felt on a gut level. So it would be the same as you taking these Legos and building something very, very stealthy like a jet engine, an airplane, an aircraft, something complex. But you could do it instantaneously, very, very quickly, and then shoot it out to your cells so that your cells could feel it, you could vibrate it, and any energy in your body at that time that could relate to that particular emotion would sort of come alive, feel the vibration, and resonate it, thereby strengthening the emotional response or opening more cells in your body to receiving it. So that some energetic reactions go out and they're very mild and they pass through very quickly. You get a soda, it's the wrong soda, you're not terribly thrilled, you take a sip, blah, 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 you drink it, you don't, you bitch for a minute, you let it go. Someone comes in and walks over and stomps on your foot or calls you some kind of vile name in error or in truth to how they feel, that's a much stronger emotion. And that's going to come out and manifest in a much more serious manner, going out to all the cells, going out to all the connective tissue areas. You're going to feel it through your whole body. That's a polypeptide. That's a string of proteins you can't ignore. So you say, well, I can't help that. If I have an emotional response to somebody doing something to me, that's just part of my body. I don't control it. But I'm going to argue that you do. And through the course of understanding, one of the things I want to begin to teach you is that you not only do, but that you have the power to stop it in its tracks and to reduce the production. Because the more often that someone dwells in lower energy or sends it out to the cells, the more receptors become created on each cell. The more receptors that get created, the more that cell responds when low things come in, the more it seeks lower vibrating events, the more it finds them, and the more emotions you make related to it, so that when that cell divides, it's going to divide like the parent cell with more connections to that particular emotion. Thereby, every cell reproduction makes you more and more prone to seek that particular response. Wouldn't it be nice if we all know people with a victim mentality if they could turn it off and be a little less prone to finding ways to be victimized? They can. But you can't create that for them. You can only create it for yourself. So if you know someone that has a lot of victim events, you might want to share this series of videos, especially this next hour's worth, so they can kind of begin to take control of themselves and they can choose, let's say, to take control of themselves or not. It's very difficult for a victim to step out of that because they like it. So I'm going to take a moment to pause because I'm coming to the end of the first 15 minutes of this hour. Makes it easier for me to audit. I'm going to pause and then I'm going to continue in the next video.